Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to KMYC. We are high atop Mount Huth, and this is your second hour co-host, Nate Black, Sutter County Auditor Controller. I got to do one thing really fast. My earphones weren't working so good. So, good morning, and welcome to this very, very rainy Saturday morning. Glad to have the rain, and we sure need it. So this morning we are going to talk a little bit about. So last week we got skipped. we couldn't talk last week. We had some technical issues, and so the preparation for last week kind of got deferred into this week, or at least in part. So plus I was out of town latter part of this week. So here I am, and we're going to talk a little bit of a week ago stuff, but it's still pertinent and appropriate for today. And so I want to talk a little bit about the Republicans and the lack of solidarity with our president, and kind of just walk through some of the hypocrisy and the weakness and fecklessness of some of these Republicans. And and maybe before I begin, I'll say that there is probably one thing I can with confidence say that I admire about the Democrat Party, and it's probably just this one thing, is they're always in lockstep with each other, almost always. They come up with a position. So, in the case today, it's Pelosi saying, I won't spend a dollar on the wall, or maybe she'll spend $1, but that's it.
In my area, we call them lemmings. No,
yeah, no, exactly. Well, so the Democrat Party, they stick together. Remember what happened in 2009, 2010, 2009, 2010, when Obama was first elected. They had the Congress, they had the Senate, and they had the presidency. And so what did we get from that 2-year period until we were able to take the House back? That is the Republicans. Well, we got Obamacare. We got the largest health care bill in history when they had all of the branches of government.
Obamacare, there was an AMCO commercial where the guy was actually watering the lawn and looks over at the camera and says, "Hey, Charlie, I think I could take one of them transmissions apart." That reminds me of that Congress, because was it 300 or 270 million people had health care that sort of kind of worked. And I had great health care, and it was really cheap.
Where in history can we point to, oh man, once government jumped in, things got a lot better.
Right.
They really resolved that issue. And I think we'd be hard-pressed to truly find a time where that happened, at least in a big way. And so Obamacare is one more of those. If you like your doctor, you can keep him or her. If you, if your premiums are high, trust me, they're going to go down. And all of that ended up becoming hogwash, or it was the moment it left his mouth, his lips. It was hogwash. It was never the intention, in my opinion, of the Democrat Party to provide health care and access to affordable health care to folks. It was simply to control folks and to throw goodies to the folks that vote for them. And that's unfortunate.
The Democratic way.
It is
all about control.
It is. It's all about power and control. So we could, and it would be very boring, talk about how lame the Democrat Party is all day. But let's not do that because we all already know that. I like to use what Mark Levin says. They're drones, and drones. What that means is they lack the sophistication to appreciate history and the meaning of history and how it repeats itself. To understand, I mean, the quintessential historical repetition is Napoleon trying to take over Russia, okay, and starting a two-front war. Well, then Hitler did the same thing and did, so it's like, hey, guys, some history there. Now, glad, of course, that Hitler failed in his history class because that came up to a good result. But Man, history is really important, and it really pays to study it. And so, with that, let's jump into the Republican side of the parties of the political spectrum. And what I want to focus on is just a few Republicans that are egregiously either hypocritical or just unprincipled. So I'm gonna be talking a little bit from an article from The Hill, and it's about GOP senators. They read Pence the Riot Act before shutdown vote. So again, this is a week old, guys. But here goes. And boy, am I proud of Vice President Pence. He's been just awesome. So, the Republicans. After we get through this opening discussion of the article from The Hill, I bet you will have an even greater appreciation for President Trump than you have already. And the reason being is President Trump is not just fighting politically the Democrat socialists, which is now the appropriate phraseology for Dems. They are socialists, or at least that's the way the party is swinging. But he's also warring with his own caucus. In other words, both the Republican Party establishment and the whole of the Democrat Party are against most of what our president stands for and what we stand for. So in the immediate instance, we're going to learn how Trump is even opposed by Majority Leader McConnell. Okay, but McConnell thus far has been able to drag, the president has been able to drag Leader McConnell along to support conservative policy, but you're going to see some windows into how that truly is like he is dragging. This is not Mitch McConnell believing in the president. Mitch McConnell, his hand is forced. And
isn't that a Trump's draining the swamp? Doing things, he's an outsider, looking at things with common sense and logic, which usually is not found at any local level.
Right, and look at Andy, great point. Look at Trump's approach to politics. He's a billionaire. He comes into it not needing anything. He's self-financed. He doesn't get campaign contributions from even conservatives or libertarians like the Koch brothers. He literally self-finances his campaign. Nobody else does that. Ross Perot was, I think, maybe the last one that did that. And so he approaches it for the right reasons, and he'd been talking for decades, someday maybe I'm going to run for president. And that was because he's a patriot. And he cares about this country, not because I don't believe it was because he needed another trophy. The guy is successful.
He once said he couldn't afford the pay cut, but he decided that the fate of the country was more important. And you look at great leaders, and they talk about the dream, the beacon on the hill, and then you look at the worst leaders we've ever had, and all they say is "I." And that's Pelota and Schuster,
yeah.
Schumer.
Chucky Schmucky Schumer.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not going to say the Pelosi one. Mark Levin's got a good one for her. Anyway, so the back to the Republicans and their lack of support for the president. So GOP senators read Pence the Riot Act before the shutdown votes. Here are the 6 GOP senators that voted against the Republican bill that would have stopped the shutdown and funded the border. Lisa Murkowski, Alaska. Johnny Isakson, Georgia. Lamar Alexander, Tennessee. Susan Collins from Maine. Cory Gardner from Colorado. And I'm going to highlight for a minute this guy, Mitt Romney, Utah. We're going to talk a little bit about Mitt. Good old Mitt. So they all voted for the Democrat proposal, and but that fell short, 52 to 44, because they needed 60. So Mitt Romney, I just want to let you know I'm sorry to have wasted a vote on you back in 2012. You're such a disappointment, and just last year, please, folks, recall he sought the president's endorsement for his campaign. For Utah Senate.
Then kicked him right in the teeth.
Then so he wins, of course, because he has the Trump wave in a terribly conservative Utah. So he wins, and before he even takes office, before he even was sworn in, I think it was, say, January the 2nd of this year, he is knocking our president about and he wrote that article, whatever paper, knocking our president. So we all kind of know about that. That's fresh in our mind. But I'm going to give you a couple of more things about Mitt, and just kind of expose him a little bit more. So he's a pretty loyal guy. That's obvious, right? I mean, he gets the endorsement, and then he's terribly loyal to the president thereafter, or not. And so here, recall this, back on October 26, 2016, right before the general election that our president won, thank goodness, Mitt is quoted as saying to ABC News, quote, "I get asked on a regular basis, boy, why aren't you running this year? And I ask myself that a lot too, but I did that once," end quote. I'll tell you, Mitt Romney, why you didn't run. Because you would have got creamed. You would have lost. You wouldn't have been our candidate in the Republican Party in the general election. You would have lost to Trump just like all of the other candidates. And you didn't run again because you shouldn't have lost 2012, but you gave it away. And so, you know, as President Trump says, you choked against Obama. So that's why you didn't run. Don't feign that family or any of that. And if you know what, if you want to spend more time with your family, stop attacking our president. So let's talk a little bit about how much Mitt Romney is a Republican. So he lost the 2012 presidential election as a Republican. He was a Republican governor. I'm using Republican very loosely here, guys. He was Republican governor of Massachusetts. What did Massachusetts give us? Romney Care. So he became the prelude to Obamacare, and it truly was the blueprint. Obama is on record saying that. So Mitt Romney, the Republican from Massachusetts governor, then Republican candidate for president, then Republican senator today in 2019. And he couldn't find it in his anywhere inside his soul to support our president. He could not. Folks, even in 2016, here's one more, to me, kind of intriguing situation. So he's asked, who's going to win Utah in 2016? Remember, this is October 26, 2016, so we have a week or week and a half before the primary. Utah has always gone Republican, or at least the last 50 years. And here's what they say, though, or here's his response, is that either Clinton, the question is posed that, hey, is either Clinton going to win or is third-party candidate Evan McMullin going to win Utah, which was home to Romney for years and usually a reliable Republican stronghold, like I said. Well, Mitt says, oh, I'm not sure. Well, guys, do you all want to know what ended up happening a week and a half later? Trump totally carried Utah by over 10 points. So the outcome was 45% Trump, 27% Hillary, and 21% the third-party independent candidate. So Mitt Romney is asked, leading right up to the election, who's going to win? Everybody before him for long, decades has always been a Republican that won. He, the polling was also, even though Trump was lower than some of the prior Republican candidates, he was still winning by a long shot. But even with all of that, he could not bring himself to say, well, Trump's probably going to take it, guys. I mean, it's always a Republican that takes it. No, instead, he's vacillating between the Democrat Hillary and the independent candidate. Well, they both got blown out of the water. Trump won. So my point is what is Mitt doing for the Republican Party? What at all? Other than he's our Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I think her name was Susan in school, Susan Cortez. But
oh man, I didn't know that.
It just it just amazes me that so much stupidity is concentrated in such a small area when you watch her speak, and but the Republicans have always ate their young, and that's the problem. But what Trump has done is he's crossed that border, that barrier between in black communities and Mexican communities, actually anybody who's poor, because he said, what have you got to lose? And as Lou Benninger says, the blacks and the Mexicans have been a cheap date for the Democrats for, 40, 50 years? And what have they done? They have just stayed the same. And here's anybody who has a question on why Trump won and why he is going to win again has never been to a Trump rally, because race, color, creed, sex, they're all represented there. And it's the enthusiasm to someone who shows a sign of hope and the ability to deliver. Unlike all politicians, he made his own money. So
Yep.
I'm just
Sorry. No, great points. And I think I'm going to probably second half of the program talk a little bit about an experience lately that was very disturbing in terms of government, an association that we pay to do government training, and this association, or it's actually not an association. It's more of a it's called the ILG. But anyway, how they started talking about patriarchy. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a training about how to engage the public in things, and it's from a government perspective. And they start, a guy from city of Fairfield asks, he's offering some advice. He tells these ILG people, hey, you all should, this program, this is at the end of the first day, this would have been a lot better if at first we would have began with the power structures in our local governments. And basically what he was getting at was we first need to look in the mirror and recognize how white males dominate local government. And so from our white male perspective, it's so hard for us to reach the minority groups. And I was so disturbed by the comments, I gasped in the, audibly.
I've got a white privilege cut if you ever need one.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, if I can last through it, that stuff, it's just not good. And so here's what I did. By the way, one other really, the gal who is holding the microphone, okay, this guy says this thing, City of Fairfield again. So she says back to him, well, as a white woman, I hear you. And I thought, and I not just thought, I said, what does that have to do with any, like, what? The fact that you're a woman and that you're white are things that you had no control over. Yeah. So therefore, those are things that I would never judge you on. Who cares? What I judge you on is the choices you make, right? That's the thing that you have control of. And so anyways, the next day I went up to the executive director. She was brand new. She just started there. And I told her how absolutely disappointing it was for this kind of discussion to be had. And I said, I'm the auditor controller of Sutter County, of the jurisdiction. And I have to write the check to you. And now I have to write a check to a group who is talking about and quote, teaching on the patriarchy and on power structures. I said, is that really your platform at ILG? Because I'd like to talk with your national group then.
It's the caste system that we have that has evolved in government because they are the knowers. I ran across that at the Awani conference in Yosemite. They are the knowers, and they actually said that. And I'm going, excuse me, what have you done actually in life? What have you done in the real world? Because if you take a look at government efficiency, that's an oxymoron in itself, but...
Well, here's one more little bit of salt on the wound. So in the second day, in the morning, this gal, different from the first day gal, she is telling the group, she's talking to us about active listening. So this is a technical thing. I mean, it's a soft kind of issue to learn about. It's not technical like accounting or something. But she's talking about technical skills. She's talking about, hey, you need to be an active listener. Well, this is so crazy and so outlandish. She says, but everybody, active listening in America means from a white middle class perspective. And I'm like, hold the freaking phone. What is going on in this classroom? Why did you even go there? Now, she was not white. I don't know if you want me to whatever, but she wasn't white. But it's like, what does that have to do with anything?
Successful people have reasons. Unsuccessful people have excuses, and that's what they're using as excuses. It's because you're, and pick the ethnic group of your choice, because I'm a failure. Excuse me, you're a failure because you're too busy chatting. So anyhow.
Man, completely agree. Well, so I went and told the executive director the next day how disappointing it was for that kind of conversation to be had at a training. And I told her, and she's a black lady, I told her, Morgan Freeman has it right. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, Morgan Freeman was being interviewed, let's say, I think his name's Morty Schaefer or something like that, 60 Minutes. Mm-hmm. And so he's being interviewed, and I'm paraphrasing. Probably a lot of you have heard this or seen this, but he says, Morty says to Morgan, well, so you're happy about Black History Month, right? And you excited? And he's like, no, not really. And he says, well, why not? Don't you, appreciate Black history? And he said, no, yeah, but I appreciate American history, and Black history is American history. Like, we don't need to differentiate. And so Morty says, oh, well, basically that's hard for him to understand. So that Morgan says, well, do you want a Jewish History Month? And Morty's like, well, no, I don't want, Jewish History Month. And he said, see? And then Morty says back to Morgan, well, how are we going to ever fix it if we don't talk about it? And Morgan says, stop talking about it. Yeah. It's only an issue because you're bringing it up.
When I went in the Marine Corps, I didn't find out I was Mexican till I think 1975. And that's where it all stopped. Is when we eliminated the draft, we stopped putting people together. And people are, say I'm different and all that, but basically we all have 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and we bleed red. And when you were in the Marine Corps, you were thrown together with 60 guys, and there was no quotas, there was no nothing. You were just 60 boots. And you're soon to be Marines, but you can't call yourself a Marine until you pass the test. And the test means working together. And you used to have exercises where you work together regardless of height, weight, anything. You take a telephone pole and you got 10 people on it. And the guy who's not pulling his weight will be kicked severely. Right. But anyhow, that starts all at the schools, and the schools, because of the indoctrination and the separation and the special classes, that's a hard habit to break, and that's what we're reaping right now.
Right.
But yeah.
So one more little thing on that, and then we're going to go back to talking about Mr. Romney. Is there is this new group that's out there in the government land, and it's called the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. GAR. It's like a monster. And so I don't know much about it. I'm probably going to bring this back to a future program to expose it a little bit more, shine a light on it. But in short, we're paying government people to go have meetings, and then they go have those meetings, and they sit there and they talk about everything to do with race and gender and all of that, and how, because it's not about servicing the constituents, it's about servicing the hard to reach constituents. That's this new 21st century model of governance is, and at least in California, is we're not going to necessarily concern ourselves with those white people that have so much privilege. We're going to just focus on everybody else. So, it's hard for me to talk about because I honestly, when I'm hiring a position or whatever, it's like I don't give a rat's what race, color, creed, any of that. That has nothing to do with it. What is interesting to me is how productive you're going to be, how moral you are and ethical, and what kind of team player, how's your personality work with the group? Those are, kind of the main things I'm looking for. I don't care anything about your race or gender or any of that.
Let me ask you, is that the difference between equality of result, which is what they're trying to do, versus equality of opportunity?
Yeah, I think that they are, because I asked a penetrating question. I said, okay, so you're doing this GAR thing. GAR. You guys are doing this. What's the outcome? What's the result? What are you going to do with this study that you guys are all performing? And what I was getting at, I was leading this person to, are you going to start doing quotas, right? Basically affirmative action, but any minority can fill the gap, not just blacks. So And the person responded, no quotas, no quotas. Well, as I look at the website, it actually speaks to that. And that is the logical extension of where this is going. Is it's going towards, hey, we have too many whites in your government. You need to reduce those, whether it's through attrition or what, and you need to bring in people of color or whatever, non-white. It's hard.
Well, they've tried that in education. It hasn't worked.
Well, my point is why are we doing all of that? Here's what I take is racism is expensive. It's costly. And you say, what do you mean? And I say it like this. This is how I learned it. And I don't know if it was Milton Friedman, but somebody very bright taught me that in a private sector business, which is what I come from. I come from private sector. I've been in government now for 4 years, but I had only private sector professional experience before I came in, and so I still approach it like that. That is, when I look at who I'm going to hire, I'm looking for the best person to serve the taxpayers, the citizens of the county. That's it. That's all my concern is about. So what my better taught me was that if you choose based upon race. So if you say, oh, I want this color over here because I don't like these other ones, or however it is you justify that in your mind, that's a costly situation. What do you mean? Well, if you're unwilling to hire somebody that is qualified because of their color, but you're only willing to hire, let's say, a white person, well, what happens is economics show us that you hire up all of those whites. And what that does is it drives up the cost of hiring those white people because there's high demand for them because this is a racist transaction, a racist situation. So what I'm saying is racism is costly. So private sector, generally speaking, it'll fix itself. Capitalism helps resolve those racial issues because it's costly to be a racist. And people generally are profit motivated. So that doesn't work every time or anything, but in the grand scheme of things, that's how I was taught, and I believe it. I believe it. So I try to bring that to government too. It's not about race, it's not about gender. It's just about hiring the best person to service the constituents.
Well, there's an 80-20 factor that in most situations, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people, and that's just a hard, cold, fast. And regardless of race, color, creed, or sexual preference, I was in insulation sales, and we had a guy that said these are not called the 10 suggestions for you. These are the commandments. But he laid $100 bill. I used to lay $100 bill on the table during the meetings. It will not tell you race, color, creed, or sexual preference, but it'll tell you your work ethics and your initiative and your ability to do the job. And that goes back to the equality of results versus equality. People who work on results are looking for excuses for their own failures.
Right. Yeah. All we have to do is provide a level playing field. It's all about opportunity, and then let the meritocracy carry it from there, based upon your abilities and
capitalism does that.
Yep. And it's a glorious thing, and that's why everybody wants to come to America. So back to Mitt Romney and Utah. So even though, here's the final thing on this, guys. So Trump took Utah, no problem, back in 2016, even though he couldn't even get a little help from Romney. So we'll note, though, that Trump's win was the lowest percentage of any Republican since George H.W. Bush in 92. And I'm talking about in Utah. And here's the final part, Mitt. Maybe that's because we have here a lifelong Republican that's never Trumping from the beginning. And that's a verb that I just made up. Never Trumping. So Mitt Romney, he could ask for the endorsement of our president to get himself political office after the failure in 2012 of his presidential run, which, by the way, I supported. And I was very supportive of a very successful businessman getting in office. I'm so glad that it ended up not being Mitt and it ended up being Trump later. But I even was supportive of Mitt. So anyway, he's been never Trumping from the beginning, and he couldn't find it in himself to just throw a bone at our Republican presidential candidate Trump. Even if he thought Trump was going to lose Utah, guys, even if he thought that Trump was going to lose Utah to either Rodham, Clinton, or Finn, he couldn't have just maybe hoped for a Republican upset and send some good political capital Trump's way. He couldn't have done that, and he didn't. Nope. Better to go with the other two candidates that Trump almost beat put together. So, Mitt Romney, let me help you out. I'd rather have a president, or even on a more basic level, a politician that may be rough around the edges, but one that has a great set of principles and policy insight. I'd rather have that than a president such as you would have made that smiled big but came up massively short in policy and core setting for America. Your state-run single-payer health care you brought to Massachusetts, so-called Romney Care, was used as a blueprint, like I said earlier, for the train wreck Obamacare. So please, save your politeness and your decorum and sit down. I like politeness and decorum, but they are secondary to your principles. Let the real man in the room, President Trump, stand up and let that American patriot support him. Can't you find a little bit of support in your heart for Trump? Even if you don't like his Twitter feed, can you set yourself aside and look at what he has done for us in the 2 years and then add to that what he has done for us in the last 2 years in the face of never-ending onslaught from the liberal media in the Democrat Socialist Party?
No other man could survive the beatdown that the news gave Trump. And he's used to being in fight. That's like, Pelosi and a lot of Democrats are just never have been tested. We have stupid people in government that shouldn't be allowed to play with matches. We have local government, same thing. You've got people that make the same mistake over and over again, and they learn on the taxpayer's back. And that's the problem is, Trump is the art of the deal. He's been in fights. He knows how to bargain. Why do you think these trade agreements are rewritten so quickly? As Obama goes, hey, you're going to wave a magic wand. Well, Obama, you haven't got enough time left in your life to learn to make the mistakes that Trump did during his life. And that's how, the scars of battle. It's how in accounting, that there are people that have a CPA license that shouldn't be allowed to play with matches, have a hard time fastening shoes. They
Sure.
use Velcro on but it's just it's amazing that people we have at a local level, we have people who refinance bad loans twice at the same loan structure at the same bad interest rate and think they're doing a wonderful job, and we still got them in office.
They're going to be paying their whole life.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
you're talking about Twitter too. Let me.
Well, I guess I just want Mitt to get over himself and start to support our president and to remember that saving America from socialism is bigger than Mitt Romney and his personal issues with the president. So that would be great. As I started out the program, Trump is under fire from all sides, and he's under fire from both the Democrats and the Republicans. So the latter only hide their disapproval better because they want their constituents back home to think that they support Trump and his policies. I think of Mitch McConnell. I think of Mitch McConnell, who ran commercial after commercial when he was campaigning. It was either 2 or 4 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And he ran how he was going to get rid of Obamacare over and over and over, in these commercials, speaking to his constituents. And then he gets maybe this was 2016. Or I think it was. Anyway, but then they take the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and Obamacare's still on the books. So I kind of like it when the politicians say what they mean and then they actually do it, like Trump. So they want Trump's support publicly, and they want their constituents to support them and think that they support Trump. But in reality, I believe that they undermine him frequently. So you never see a guy like Ted Cruz voting against the president, at least on these existential issues like building the wall. So Lying Ted, as Trump used to call him, which really turned me off from Trump because I was a big Ted Cruz fan and still am. But a guy like Ted Cruz stands principled, okay, with Trump. He put that, small ball stuff, that primary fight that they had aside, and he stands with Trump to secure the border. So, Mitt, be more like Ted. Put the America first and yourself second, third, or fourth.
Trump had, 16 people he was going against there? He had to thin the herd real quick. And how he did it is the same way he does Twitter. He gets up in the morning and he looks around and he puts his finger in his mouth, checks the wind, and says, let's see how we can make them spin. And he goes and puts something out on Twitter, and he just sits back and watches them rip it all apart. And they're going, while they're busy spinning, he's got his troops and the people that he has put with him. And he will not suffer fools.
No.
And he takes and he finds the people and he says, now, while they're spinning, you get this done. And it's classic military strategy.
Yes.
It's he would have made a great general, because he'd go start a firefight off to the right side. His tanks would come off on the left side. And they would still be scratching and beating on the right side, and he's around him.
Yep.
And that's the way it is with successful. We have been blessed on the Yuba County side with Kurt Akins and Robert Bendorf and Kevin Mallon and a lot of people, Jennifer Vasquez, who know how to accomplish things and do it quickly. The fire. We have an OES that set up that fair, the Yuba Sutter Fairgrounds, right then. They had things going, and then everybody else comes along and takes credit for it. The Kurt Akins, he's guided this beast for how many years? 14 years, 12 years, 14 years. And the most difficult thing in the world is to put up a dam and a powerhouse and to keep those water rights. And they have done that for Yuba County. So, you have to understand that there are people who do things, people who watch things, and people who doesn't know anything that's happened at all. Those are the three kinds of people. Andy comes down these little things, but anyhow. All right.
Well, so Santos?
You're a shaker. You're a mover and shaker. Okay.
Wikiman, do you want to jump into a commercial?
Check out the Territorial Dispatch. Papers are weekly and can be obtained free at distribution or by mail through subscription. It's the only locally owned and operated newspaper in the region. The paper is the rest of the story. And also check out the E-Territorial. It's an online version of the Territorial Dispatch, which features local news and events for the Yuba Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada County areas. You'll also find daily and breaking news updates, current traffic, and weather information, along with a calendar of local events. Visit the E-Territorial at eterritorial.com.
Welcome back. Good morning. This is your host for the second hour of the Nate and Andy Show, Nate Black, Sutter County Auditor Controller. And it is a real pleasure and honor and a privilege to be here and to speak with you. And wanted to say real quickly, why am I here? What am I doing? What's my goal? I'm very transparent with my staff, with my friends and colleagues, and so let's talk about that. 4 years ago, in 2014, in February, I was talking with my colleague at work. I was a CPA at the old Tripman and Renfro. At the time, it was called Matson and Isom, over on Civic Center Boulevard in Yuba City. And I'd come up from Sacramento the year before with my wife, who's from Yuba City, and we kind of wanted the smaller town environment. We were in Sacramento and wanted out. And so anyway, I was a conservative at the time, and so I paid attention to politics and history. I love history. I love history. And so I was talking to my colleague at work, CPA firm, and he said, "Hey, I just saw Mr. Stark, who used to be the auditor controller in Sutter County, at Kiwanis lunch, and he was trying to get me to run. So, and I told him no, but I have a friend at work that is into this stuff. So anyway, Mr. Stark and I ended up getting breakfast or lunch, and kind of talking through it. And anyway, so I ran for office. And the important part of that I wanted to share with you is that I ran for office at 30 years old, by far the youngest in the state, for this role, because I had a real passion for history, for conservatism and politics, and for America. I'd say most foundationally. When you read history and you understand what the framers to the Constitution and the founders through the Revolutionary War, what they did, and you learn about how it had, in different fits and starts, tried in other places in the world, how the French Revolution had gone really awry with the mass murders and executions they were doing. And you learn about Charles de Montesquieu and how he gave us the three branches of government that our framers picked up and instituted in the Constitution. So you read history and you just start to realize what an amazing and unique place America is. And it doesn't mean that other countries aren't great, or and sometimes that other countries aren't better in some ways. No, that's not what we're saying. But we are saying that America is exceptional. It really is. And the people are great. Obviously Americans are awesome, but really the people around the world are great. It's our system of governance that is the differentiation here. We have a system that encourages liberty and freedom and the associated responsibility, but it encourages that individual liberty as opposed to groupthink and collectivism. And that is why America is great, and that is why I had a passion for running for office. And Barack Obama was our president at the time, and suffice it to say, utter disappointment. Not just disappointment. He took us back in a lot of ways, backwards. And, for being the first half-black president, he really set us back on race relations. 10 years ago, we weren't talking about this kind of stuff, but it's really gotten a lot worse. And why? Well, for politics and power, not because America needed this. The opposite is true. We were doing fine. Every generation in America has improved the prior situation. Every time. This is the first time where that's up in the air, where we're not sure that we're going to be improving, that maybe we're in fact going backwards. So, couple more things. I've heard in the past comments, and I know that this came up, I want to say even in the Appeal Democrat, but our new HR director in Sutter County, her name is Gina Rowland, and she came into Sutter County from YOLO. She was the HR director there, and she had difficulties at first because of her pay. And she took a pay cut coming from YOLO County to go to Sutter. YOLO's a bigger jurisdiction, more money, more affluency. Generally speaking, that results in greater pay. So she took a pay cut to come here, but the pay that she got here was still, let's say significant or on the higher end from what some of the other department heads get. Okay, so that's kind of the situation. But she took heat for her salary. And somebody even at this program has kind of knocked her for overpaid and stuff. And I just want to say that's not true. She earns her money, and I can tell you in the last couple of months since she, it's been more than a couple of months, but she has extreme value, and she is a hardworking lady. She has great ideas. She's very professional. So I don't think of her as expensive. I think of her as a great value, and she's become a really great teammate to the executives in Sutter County. And so to the County Board of Supervisors, Sutter County, well done. Great hire. She's awesome. And so, we can knock things a lot, and there's a lot to knock, a lot of criticism to be leveled. But I'll tell you that there's also a lot to be thankful for and a lot of positive. And I think Gina's a part of that latter. She is a real positive for Sutter County and our government. And anyway, I enjoy working with her and look forward to many more years of good work that we're going to do. So thank you, Gina. And okay, the last 10 minutes or so, we're going to go ahead and jump into an Adam Carolla clip. We like Adam, and he is a lot of fun. And it's Adam Carolla on college snowflakes.
Mr. Carolla, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. It's an honor to be asked to speak in front of you all. First, just a quick piece of business. Do we get to keep these pads? This is going to be huge. And not that I'm going to, but what do you reckon they'll get on eBay? I'm not saying I'm going to. It's pure curiosity. I'm not as eloquent as Mr. Shapiro. I sort of speak in beats and off the top of my head, and I've written a few down for you all today. First off, I come from a very blue-collar background. I grew up in North Hollywood, California. My dad was a school teacher, and my mom received welfare and food stamps, and told me very importantly when I was young, when I asked her if she would get a job, she said, "And lose my welfare benefits? No, thank you," which taught me a very valuable lesson, which was never to listen to my mom. All right. I ended up being a carpenter and then a boxing instructor, and met Jimmy Kimmel when I taught him to box for a morning zoo stunt, and eventually made my way onto TV and radio. In the early days of my career, I toured the country with Dr. Drew when we were on Loveline together, a syndicated radio program also on MTV, and we must have played 100 college campuses with nary a word of negativity, and no safe spaces and no stuffed animals being handed out. Simply went there, said our piece. Many controversial ideas were exchanged, and that's just what they were, exchanged. And then we got our paychecks and went home, and 15 years later, I went out with Dennis Prager, conservative talk show host, and attempted to do a show at Cal State Northridge, where my mother was an actual graduate from, with a Chicano Studies degree, believe it or not. So she's rolling in dough about now. And they pulled the plug on it. They gave us no good reason why we couldn't speak there, and we actually had to get attorneys involved to go back and speak at a later date. We're talking a lot about the kids, and I think they're just that, kids. We are the adults, and I don't think we are doing the children. I mean, these are 18 and 19-year-old kids that are at these college campuses. They grew up dipped in Purell, playing soccer games where they never kept score, and watching Wah Wah Wubsy. And we're asking them to be mature. We need the adults to start being the adults. Studies have shown that if you take people and you put them in a zero-gravity environment, like astronauts, they lose muscle mass, they lose bone density. We're taking these kids in the name of protection, we're putting them in a zero-gravity environment, and they're losing muscle mass and bone density. They need to live in a world that has gravity. When you need to expose your children to germs and dirt in the environment to build up their immune system. Our plan is put them in a bubble, keep them away from everything, and somehow they'll come out stronger when they emerge from the bubble. Well, that's not happening. Children are the future, but we are the present, and we're the adults, and we need to act like it. And I feel that what's going on these campuses is we need law and order. We need to bring back law and order, but I think if we just had order, we wouldn't need law. So could we just bring back order, and could the faculty and administration on these campuses act like faculty and administration, and most importantly, adults, who are in charge of these kids who need some gravity in their life. Thank you.
Welcome back. Well, Adam, spot on. And like he says, you have to build immunity to diseases, to bacteria, to all of those things. And what he also meant, I'm sure, is you have to build character. And you build character through sticking your neck out there, through trying, getting up out of bed. You know, for example, right here, Saturday morning, I get out of bed early. Santos got up probably even earlier. We get in here because we're passionate about this stuff. Does it mean every word we're going to say or every clip we're going to put is going to be perfect? No, we're trying. We're trying to do something here. We're trying to make a change. We see everything around us. A lot of it is crumbling. I constantly come to you guys talking about numbers, saying, look at our debts. Look at our debts, $22 trillion. You know how many zeros that is. Write it on the whiteboard. I do that for the kids that I go out and teach junior achievement to. Generally the first class. I show them. I did it a week ago at Berry School down in South Yuba City. And I'll tell you, even seventh graders look at that number and they go, wow, that's a head scratcher. That's really big. And I say, yeah, and you guys are all going to have to pay it back. And your kids. That's a heavy thing to put on a seventh grader, right? But you got to say it. If we're not saying it, then we're hiding the ball. So, man, we're trying here, folks. We're trying to make things better, and the way to do that is you got to try. You have to get up. You have to put out effort. And so that's what Adam Carolla is saying: is stop coddling. You know, if you lose, you lose. Get back up. So, for example, recently, just to give you a little silly anecdote, but I'm trying to play indoor soccer. My boy's playing indoor soccer too, and so I'm on an adult team, and he's on his under 10s or under 11s. Well, we just get into it, meaning we're outdoor soccer players, and we've done that, but indoor have less experience. I haven't played it in 15 years, and my boy, it's brand new to him. So we go inside, and we're just getting slaughtered. You know, we've won one game. Both the adult teams won a game, and the kids team, they've won a game, but we've lost probably 4 or 5 or 6. And they're not just 1-0 or 2-1 soccer matches like a lot of my friends would joke to me. What an exciting thing. No, these are 10-0 or 10-1. And so my point of bringing that up is to say, look, you got to go for it. And it's okay if you lose. Just get back up. Try again. It doesn't mean you're careless about it or flippant, but it's okay to lose. And so I teach that to the kids after the games and stuff. I'm not there to see a win every time. I'm there to increase their skills, to hopefully increase their enjoyment of the game and love for the game, and that's what it's about. And a couple of weeks ago, when I was last on the program, I ended talking a little bit about abortion and how I'm very, very, very pro-life. And I had heard some comments that maybe I should stick to numbers, and so here was my response to that. And bless their heart for saying it, but my response is, look. That is my expertise, numbers and accounting and finance. That's something that's more my bailiwick, and I do generally try to stick with it and try to tie these concepts and concerns to fiscal issues. But on abortion, we could talk about financial and fiscal issues. The clip earlier talked. Anyway, my point is that I'm willing to give up my career, my political capital, and all that if I'm able to save kids by talking about abortion. You know, kids need to be protected. There's really no excuse for ending a child's life. I don't care if it's in the belly or just born, or that child has just as much right as you and I do to begin a life. And the choice, you want to talk pro-choice? The choice was at the time of conception. You didn't have to have sex. You chose to. You got to live with those consequences. Don't take it out on the baby that's coming to be. So you know what? I talked about abortion now 2 shows in a row. And I'm proud of it. So, hey, everybody, you have an absolutely wonderful weekend. Stay dry insofar as you can, and look forward to speaking with you again.